So, welcome to another episode of BetaTalk. I'd like to thank my season sponsor, who are Intergas. You'll be able to find them, their website in the show notes. You'll also be able to find in the show notes the link to sign up to my new newsletter that's coming, where we feature case studies from the Guild of Master Heat Engineers. And we might even get onto that subject a bit later in this episode. So joining me today are three of my friends from the media world. So you all know that I usually have engineers on, or people from the third sector, manufacturers. But today it's going to be quite exciting because I've got three gentlemen that have been involved in this industry, but with a different sort of vantage point. So they run the installer show. You'll all know quite a lot about the installer show. We'll talk about the history of that. So let me introduce you to them. We've got Joe Dart, who I knew when he was editor at HVP magazine. He's now Lyrical Communications, who run the installer online magazine, and we'll talk about that sort of transition and how he came here. We've got Joe Sharpe. Most of you know him. He's the big cheese, really. He's the online editor at
Too kind.
Installer Online. And then Andrew, and he probably won't like me saying this, Andrew's been involved in media around sort of construction and this kind of thing for quite a long time. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about their journeys into media, and then specifically into media in sort of the construction, building services, engineering world, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So welcome to the show, guys. Let's start
Thank you.
Let's start with Andrew first. So when did you get into this sector, Andrew?
It's a good idea to do the oldest first, Nathan. Very good. Yeah, so I'm Andrew Gavid. My current role is editor-at-large of Installer and Elemental. And what effectively that means is I have no proper title. And I can do what I like within reason to cover the industry, which is kind of what I've been doing for the last, 30 years nearly. Started off in, of all things, a coal magazine in 1992, before some of you were out of short trousers. Yeah, it was a magazine called World Coal. Very big international industry, sprung up in 1992 because Michael Heseltine closed most of the mines in England. So there's a lot to write about. Just often the way, came out of uni, did a magazine journalism diploma, post-grad, and they were very quick to say you may be taken in by the glamour of magazines like FHM and Arena, but where the money is, this is exactly what they said, where the money is and where the reliable work in journalism is in trade publishing. So instantly I thought, okay, that sounds interesting. But it was quite a difficult time in the early 90s. So World Coal was effectively the first magazine that offered me a job. So that's how I started writing about coal. I'll very quickly move on because I can see that these other chaps have got shorter careers to talk about. After that, moved above ground to a magazine called International Construction. Wrote a lot about construction, a lot about equipment, because that's where, again, the advertising was. And then was poached to become the plant editor to write about diggers for Construction News, a weekly newspaper. And I'm sure we'll move on to this. Back in those days, there was about 20 of us writing weekly news about the construction industry. And then just moved on within the EMAP publishing company to work for a magazine called RAC, which is all about cooling. And then slid into the heating world. It's a bit of a land grab by me. We took on the heating, the HME News, the legacy of, I think it was a 1970s title, that one. RAC, for you fact fans, was actually born out of a newspaper started in 1898 called Refrigeration News. 10 years, man and boy, editing H&V and RAC, and then I've become a digital nomad in my twilight years.
Poached.
Here I am. Poached again, yeah. Haven't had a proper interview for probably 25 years, which will annoy everybody.
Definitely.
Lots of lunches and being wooed one way or another. And yes, the fine folk at Lyrical Communications said, come and write about all the kind of things you already write about, do it as a digital newsletter, and come and work on content for the shows, which we'll talk about. Come and join the esteemed Joe Sharpe on Installer Online and the Installer Show. So the rest is history.
So you've been in the heating industry right from the beginning, then, because coal, obviously, massive part.
Yeah, we wrote about it from a point of view of digging it up and sending it around the country. Less so than heating, but yeah, I've seen it at the source. I've been down a mine.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah, and that was, I have a great appreciation for anybody who's ever been a coal miner, because it took several hours to blow the soot out your nose after getting up.
Now, Joe, you were editor at HVP, and you and I actually we did a 40th anniversary of that magazine, didn't we? And my dad and I were in it because my granddad was reading it right from the word go. He used to then drop it off to my dad's, and I don't know, people think it's sad, but I was reading that from about the age of 12 onwards, because I kind of knew I was going to go into the industry. So that magazine doesn't exist now, does it? And is that because there's a shift? Because we're online now, aren't we? We live in an online world, don't we? We're all using social media. Does anyone miss the sort of physical magazines? I mean, obviously, Joe, you went online at 2000 and...
Yeah, during lockdown. So
during lockdown, wasn't it?
2020?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's... I mean, are lots of magazines in other sectors going online? It's a bit of a thing.
I think so. I think across the boards that digitalisation in media and publications, it's been ongoing for years and years and years. And I think typically when you look at construction, it's kind of always been a few years behind everywhere else in that regard. So magazines have probably lasted longer than they otherwise would have done. But definitely, I think since COVID, you've seen it across the world, everything's become more digital as a whole. I think people just weren't getting their news, everything else, they're getting from other sources, and it just didn't really have so much of a place. And obviously for me, working on H3P beforehand, as you alluded to, that was part of the reason why it kind of went by the wayside, really, because the print offering wasn't as strong as it used to be, because you look at print titles these days, hopefully some of your readers still do read print titles, but you look at them and they're smaller issues, there's the distribution's much smaller, the cost of, especially through COVID and the energy crisis kind of since then, the cost of basically putting together a magazine has probably doubled, quadrupled, etc., because you've got printing, you've got distribution, all that sort of stuff just costs so much more. And all these titles are kind of, it comes down to advertising sales, really. And it's a harder sell to kind of, if you've got a smaller issue going to fewer people, saying, can you still spend the same amount on advertising that you did in previous years? So it's all kind of slid by the wayside a little bit, I'd say. So
I don't believe you can make any money as a magazine on its own anymore. Perhaps some of your readers will beg to differ, but you look around all the publications that are still around, we were all doing other stuff. So HVP, you had FEX.
Yep.
The EMAP, the H&V titles, we had awards, which were really the money spinners, and you can look across at the likes of Heat Pump today. They've got their own printing press, so they're certainly getting some help from that. And they have their own awards as well. So they're always...
That's still a magazine then, Andrew?
Heat Pump Today?
Today,
yeah. So Heat Pump Today, I believe, is now blended in with ACR Journal.
Yes, yeah.
So there's been a lot of manoeuvring. I mean, we bring Mr. Sharpe in on the manoeuvring, because you became online, I guess, because of the shutdown. Was that, or you were already thinking it at that point?
No, so when I came in, I was online editor. So this was back when the magazine was still the flagship. There was loads of different magazines. It was pretty much like, this was pre the Installer Show, the first one in 2015. And we were told, no one will ever read these digital newsletters. No one will ever care about digital advertising and all of this sort of stuff. Like, podcasts weren't a thing. Social media was very in its infancy. YouTube was very in its infancy. So Ian McManus, who was our kind of founder, MD, always invested in the online side of it, but the magazine was easily still the flagship. As that kind of got on, we launched the show to eventicize the mag in 2015, and then the show started to kind of overtake. Lockdown was, so we've always had the digital platform, so when we were locked down, we always had that to fall back on. So we had a big old transition, we invested in it, and we started doing webinars and all that sort of stuff, but we already had a basis for it. And so did other magazines as well, but some not within our sector, but other sectors would have had to go from scratch, and that could have even killed them off. But what kind of made sense for us is, I think we managed to get our issue out just before COVID. So the issue that went out had nothing in it about COVID, and then it lands when there's lockdown. Literally, it was just a bit of timing. So then there's 2 months until the next one, and by that time the whole landscape's changed. There was like APHC, CIPHE put in guidance out about whether or not you can go to people's houses. Are they key workers? Are they not? Everyone's web traffic spiked, because where do installers get this information from? It's either us, a different publisher, or it's the government, or it's an association. So it just shows how all those webinars and stuff that we did were getting hundreds and hundreds of people signing up to them. They still are, but no one had anything else to do.
You're responding in real time, aren't you? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it's immediate. It's always there. You can Google it. You can still find the information. So it really highlighted how stringent the digital propositions was. When you then combine that with the trade show, you've got the best of both worlds. I still like print. I still read magazines. We partner with loads of magazines for the show, which is really good. So if you're sat in a van and there's one on the counter, you pick it up and you read through it. It's good to have in your hand. So there's room for both. Yeah. It's just the way that our business went. The magazine went from flagship to almost redundant in about 10 years.
Because the history of your magazine it stems back to Corgi, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it was the mag with the Corgi register. So when you were Corgi registered, that was the one that you'd get. Then Corgi, the Corgi license moved over to registered gas engineer, to the Gas F register, which had registered gas engineer. So Ian took on Installer as a independent mag. He used to work on it, so it became like an independent mag for heat and plumbing engineers.
I guess the one thing we should say about the advantage. Maybe the advantage was discovered as you went along. I don't know. The advantage of digital is the data that comes out of it. Because I look back at my days of magazines and I think there's no way we could have known so much about what our readers did. The people, you can actually see who's reading, or at least who's opening the emails that we send. Whereas you could never guarantee that as a magazine. You'd hope that people were picking it up, but once it goes through your letterbox, you don't know what's happening to it.
No. Exactly. You don't know how many has been shared between, I think it's an old kind of...
We were talking about that, weren't we? About how we used to talk when we were in magazines about readership. So we would say, and we'd pick a number, well, we wouldn't pick a number, our publisher would pick a number that say, well, actually, that magazine is read by 5 people. So, well, actually, won't be that many magazines, it'll be 5 times that many readers.
Do you know about this, Nate? So ABC certification, basically, so that you would get, the ABC are like the auditors for magazines. Right. So we'd have to say to them, so ours are individually requested, so we had a list of 40,000 people that have said, I want this mag, right? Yeah. Then, so they give us a certificate for that, but there is a thing in it where the readership is 2.5 times more than that, because they think that if you've read it, you've then given it to somebody else, like a colleague or an apprentice.
In my family,
yeah. But so then you don't know any of it.
Exactly.
It's one of those.
We work on the basis that the magazine would go into a company, and that company
20 people.
It could be read by 20 people. So, I mean, the sad thing about ABC, so Audit Bureau of Circulation, was people, when the economics changed about sending all the magazines out, cost of paper, cost of printing, a lot of publishers said, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We'll get by with what we call a publisher's statement. So it's an estimate. And then, that's when well, actually, this is read by 5 people.
Why was there this independent auditing thing?
I guess it's because, and advertisers like to have an independent view of how many people are reading the magazine. Because if you're
so that's a good business model. So they just set up as this auditor that audits all these magazines, and obviously they have to pay for the certificate they give you.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, we have to pay for it.
Another great business model, isn't it?
It's the same though. In radio, there is auditors for radio. But like you said, for the podcast and for the digital stuff, you'll know exactly how many people have downloaded it, listened to it through which streams.
You do. I do worry. So obviously, I've been reading your stuff for many years, decades, but. If I'm time constrained, I'll say, look, I've got an email from Elementor or Installer. I will click on it, and then maybe the phone will go, or I've got to do something else. So I don't actually read it. I've opened it, but I didn't get round to reading it. So, I mean, can we know that data?
Yeah, exactly.
You can.
Yeah, we invest in some extra analytic software that's really good.
You're not monitoring me and watching me, Joe.
No, we've got other people doing that.
You give it time, Nathan. We'll get there eventually.
So there's loads of different metrics. So it's like that would count as one session, but then you can have like the amount of time people spend on each article. Engaged minutes. There's all these different metrics to look at it. So we know which, when we publish anything, we know how popular it is. How many
so you
people
can see if I'm scrolling, like let's say it's one of Andrew's long articles, that it will know if I'm scrolling through with it. So that means you're kind of reading it.
How many engaged minutes?
Rather than just open and I've gone off and made myself a cup of coffee and forgot it.
Yeah, and that'll balance
There's
us
a thing called click through where we know that someone has not just opened it; they've actually gone through it.
What's an impression? Because I always see that. What is an impression? When something says, 10,000 impressions, what does that
whenever someone's seen it.
Yeah, it's kind of a view,
So
basically.
it comes up on someone's feed, but they might be scrolling through their feed, so they've not
Yeah.
actually cognitively took it in, it's just been plonked on their feed.
That's the kind of weakest metric that we would,
Right.
Impressions are great, and when you're getting millions,
You want high numbers, that's what you go for.
But then you want the click-throughs, then you want the engaged minutes, then you want them to do whatever afterwards. So sign up for the show, obviously. We want an article about anything with the reg link at the end, and we eventually want people to register for the show. So impressions is brilliant, but then it goes down to views, then it goes down to click-throughs on the reg side, then it goes down to that.
I suppose marketing people and advertisers want to see this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've had some good news today, and I will big up. So we all know John from Wolsey, the COO from Wolsey, John Hancock, and he's been really helpful to me, as has Dave from Primary Pros. So I've got this guild of Master Heat Engineers thing started up, and it's going to have this podcast has always had historically one sponsor per season. But what I want to do, as you know, there's a bit of a buzz around. We've got to collaborate. So a couple of years ago, I think it was the Heat Pump Summit. That was the big thing to come out. More collaboration in the industry. So I'm going to have a little consortium of sponsors, and I'm going to call them guild patrons. And John rang me up this morning, or got hold of me this morning, and said, "Yeah, Wolsey want to be involved. We want to help you disseminate good information from the good engineers." So this is engineer upwards rather than sort of manufacturer led. So big shout out to him. But this whole, I got them to look at my pitch, because what I was being told is marketeers want to see impressions, listeners, numbers, and I always say to them, I said, look, yeah, I do know roughly, but it's about the quality of my listeners. I've got people at the energy department listen to me, like the third sector. So sometimes I think quality matters over quality.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining the way advertising works now, because back in the day, I mean, to get on the front page of HVP was quite a few £1,000, wasn't it?
Yeah,
back in the day.
It cost a lot of money, absolutely.
So I imagine that whole thing's really moved and shifted, because there's all different things that, whether it's banners, when the internet first started with banners and stuff like this, was it? So I imagine it's all changed completely.
I think I would, if someone was saying, how should I work with Lyrical Communications, I think banners would be somewhere down our list, because it's like you say, it's about the quality. I mean, we use terms like engagement, and it's about that the whole shtick of the way that the lyrical folk work. It's about partnerships, and it's about talking to each other, a two-way conversation. And I think, it is important to when anybody is talking about what are your numbers, what do you mean by the numbers? What do you want from the numbers? Our guys will all say, well, what do you want from the numbers? What are you looking for? What are the customers you're looking for? And it's about, as you say, quality is the quality of the engagement. So the fact that you can point to, I don't know, half a dozen people in Desnes, half a dozen people at the top of the tree in the industry, it doesn't matter to a certain extent if there's only, for instance, 100 people listening. If 20 of those 100 people are at the top of the tree, that's the important part. And again, what we like to say with the data is that we can point to that.
I mean, you're the biggest sort of media entity in this whole industry. I mean, so do you still have marketing people still want to know? Because I'd have thought like they just want to be involved in the show, they want to be involved in your I'd have just thought that would have been a natural thing for them to want to do.
No, we still have to justify pretty much everything. I think that's kind of natural.
And I think the conversation is, you're right, because there is a certain level of people who think it's just a show, then they go home and then another show coming up a year later. there's been a lot of work that we've done as a company, what we used to call it, we're still calling it 365.
Yeah, always on.
So it's always on, and talk to us through the year, talk to our readers through the year, and the whole the birth of Elemental London, our other show, has come from there's a whole world out there of decision makers and specifiers who want their own content, who want their own show. So here we are. 19th to 20th of November. Come to Elemental London. I believe there might be a podcast going on there.
So this acronym that marketing people use, ROI, return on investment. So when they go to a show, how do they sort of measure their ROI? Is it like how many people have visited their stand?
So this is what we've done very well at in the last couple of years, and it's not just us, it's the sales guys, it's also people like Stu Duff, who's our like head of communications. Each one of them is different. So it's like, do you want to be very visual? I want my brand everywhere, there's options for that. Do you want them to buy stuff on the stand? So a lot of the tool manufacturers can trade, and it's like, okay, well, we want to come away from this with £20,000. Is it sign-ups to installer schemes? Is it, what is it? So we talk to all of those people and say, what are you here for the show? It's a product launch. Oh, brilliant. We're doing a VIP launch at this time. We want 100 installers there. And then we work like as a brand to try and make all of that happen, because they're all different, and then that's your ROI. So they know what they want. They've got scanners, and they can scan your badges. They can then follow up. They can then justify for next year or an upscale or whatever. But the more everyone talks to each other, the better it is. Even for the visitors, for the installers, if you know that there's going to be a big product launch at this time, go over there. That you'll make that part of your day, and then it's box ticked and everyone wins.
And it is about having data is great, so we started off by saying how important it is, but the conversations are even more important, because you could have 200 leads in a day and 94 of them could be from students, and then they're not necessarily going to be quality leads. So it's about the conversation. Well, what do you want? What sort of people do you want? And let's look down the list of the leads that were provided. And so, as you say, it's horses for courses. Different people want different things, and sometimes it is about telling manufacturers, telling contractors, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought of this way of doing it? We're very proud of our research that we've been doing with manufacturers, and we can do that, and there's some quite big pieces of work that we've done completely away from what you'd call a traditional publisher. So the great thing about digital is we're not limited by anything.
It's really frustrating as well. Like, let's say the show's in June. There's a product launch in, June. Everyone goes to the show, makes a load of noise about it, and then you don't tell us anything else about it for the rest of the year. You know what I mean? So then we could do technical articles, we can do webinars and that sort of stuff to keep the kind of noise going, so you can maximise your investment. Because installers want to get a hand on new kit, don't they? That's why they come to the trade show. They want to see new stuff. Yeah. Well, to be honest, if it's bad, so they can tell them it's bad. Do you know what I mean?
And just again, while we're in the business of blowing our own trumpets, one of the things that I was keen to do when I joined was to write, as you already mentioned, longer pieces, because I think that has got lost in the world of publishing has got very bit. We had a conversation about this on LinkedIn a few months back, didn't we? Know the world of publishing got very tight economically. The staff was all cut back. There's a whole bunch of publications that are run by one person, well, sometimes two magazines, one person, and it means that they haven't got the time to write considered pieces like back in the day. And so one of the great privileges of coming here is that there is time to go and talk to, you mentioned John Hancock, go and meet John Hancock, have an hour's conversation and write an hour's worth of copy, a decent feature, and a few people learnt a few things after that. He was very generous with his time, but also with what he was able to talk about. And we learned quite a bit about what might be going on, and that's the access to people in positions of decision making is a great thing. And interestingly enough, not everybody in the industry thinks about, well, actually, our boss in Europe would be really interested to talk about a wider perspective. So again, we talked to the boss of Danfoss Climate Solutions. completely different perspective to perhaps the guy in Danfoss UK. So really interesting, really great opportunity. And again, because it's digital, you're not constrained by 2 pages and then an ad.
I think it's quite interesting when you're obviously talking about resources there in terms of actually having, when it comes to journalists, we're pretty tied up for time. We don't have so much time to actually go out and do a lot of different things, and especially in the cases Andrew talking about where it's 2 people, one person across 2 magazines. Like how is someone supposed to serve their audience if they're pulled in so many different directions in such a short period of time? The great thing that setup we have at Lyrical is that we have a team working on content. We have the resources to allow us to actually go out and find interesting stories, touch upon the things that really matter to the audience overall, to the installers, to actually make sure that we are hitting those right notes, that we're providing the advice. And even if from our perspective, none of us are tradespeople by trade, but we have links into a much wider audience, much wider connection, where we can actually get them on board to, hey, write something technical for us that's going to work for our audience. We do things like article series, which are very much focused around what installers want and need, and yes, we will lean on our partners who kind of know the ins and outs of that, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to provide that and make that happen if we didn't have these kind of resources here to make that a realistic proposition. And that's kind of where we see a lot of success on the web in terms of traffic, etc., that side of things. We are providing for our audience in such a way that a lot of our competitors can only really dream of, I think, in a lot of ways. So it's a good privileged position to be in.
But have you got competitors now, though? I mean, obviously HVP Effects is sort of now, well, this I suppose really
we're not going to sit here as arrogant as to say we don't have competitors.
No, of course
we have lots of competitors in.
There's not that many now, though,
in different sections, I think.
You've got the refrigeration and the air conditioning sort of magazines. They've been around. You used to work for one, didn't you?
Yeah. So I mean, we're not so big in cooling in the world of installer and elemental, but I think that's going to change because we've talked about how heating and cooling are getting closer together. The industries are close together. You get heat recovery, which joins the 2 up. You get heat pumps, which joins the 2 up.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, the thermodynamically cooling is just heat removal. But going back to the show, so the interesting thing is, and we've chatted about this before, Joe, because the installer show's 10 years old, so I was at the show this year, wasn't I? I was talking about the past, present, future. I did my live audience podcast, and I had John from Wolsey and I had Madeline from Nesta, because they've teamed up to do this brilliant scheme where gas engineers can get a free heat pump, basically. Yeah. It's a fantastic scheme. Nesta piloted it, and Wolsey are fully on board with that. But we've talked about, back in the day when that's 2015 it started.
Yep.
And you had boiler manufacturers come, and we've all grown up with this industry, where for the last few decades there's a few boiler manufacturers that are dominated. And then in 2017, we won't mention names, but it was very apparent one of the boiler manufacturers didn't turn up, which gave the opportunity for other boiler manufacturers to meet and greet engineers and basically say, look who isn't here. So there's some interesting dynamics that go on at these shows. I mean, I'm always, I know the brands quite well. They sometimes worry about what I'm saying, but some of them go to great lengths to have the biggest stand, and this kind of thing is going on. I mean, that's quite fascinating from someone that's known the industry for so long as I have. There's all this sort of dynamic things going on, because there are definitely people that want to be seen as being better than the others. I mean, as the company that puts that show on, I mean, do you see this? Is it quite interesting, that dynamic?
Yeah, it's funny watching the kind of history of the trade show, because when it first launched, it was much smaller. People said it wasn't a show for plumbing, it was just heating. We didn't have all the boiler manufacturers there. We didn't have any heat pump stuff there. Looking at it now, it's completely different. So there is kind of competition for space and stuff. So people will be like, I want to have the biggest stand, or I want to do... It all comes down to whatever people say, really, whatever they want to get from it. But that they're all in competition with each other, aren't they? So they all want to have the conversations with the visitors and say, my thing X, my X, Y or Z is better than anyone else's. This is why you should sign up to it.
They are they're heavily in competition, but they're all friends with each other. So you'll find a lot of it, even within senior leadership teams and high up of they've sometimes come from different companies. They've moved around a lot. They've known each other for 4 decades. So as an entity, they're highly competitive. But when you're actually at the show, they're all very friendly. The big brands in the boiler world and heat pump world, they all know each other. So
and they all sit on the same.
Very interesting dynamic.
HHIC, HPA.
Well, that's I always say that's a problem because I see that as they all come together. They need to push out whatever they're pushing out that appeases all of them. It has to sort of, but it might not be what society wants and the engineers want. Because they are super duper competitive. So whatever they push out or lobby for is I mean, I'm quite critical.
We've got to be friends to everybody,
yes.
Nathan. So we respect your work on LinkedIn, and we point all the listeners towards that if they want an opinion on associations. But currently, we work with all of them, so we have to. We have to be careful that we give everybody an opportunity.
That's a good point because I can be walked and all because I'm super. I'm in media now. By hook or by crook, I got in. I didn't set out to be in media. I just thought, I want to do a podcast and get the voice of and amplify and disseminate the voice of good engineers.
You're welcome to join the brethren of the Fellowship of the Journalists.
But you went and did your degrees in journalism. I mean, what's that like? Do you think that's changed now? Do you think young people going to do? I suppose it has. It's all digital now, isn't it?
Just didn't want spoken to anyone.
Can I just say for the record that I did my degree before journalism degrees were invented. That's how long ago it was.
Was yours NTCJ or anything like that?
Well, there were two options: NCTJ and then the magazine diploma, which was the Periodical Publishers Association.
Oh, wow! So
I went down the magazine route. But yeah, I did a postgrad. There's a lot of. I mean, it's a very interesting discussion actually. The whole world of podcasting and vlogging has added a whole layer of new citizen journalists, full-time journalists, part-time journalists, and then you've got all the influencers getting involved. Some of them call themselves journalists, some of them don't. And it is interesting because, we would say that our guiding principle is to be objective.
Yeah.
To see both sides, to try and present both sides of the argument. Whereas the present company accepted, but the podcasters, etc., don't have that. They don't have to stick to that. They can take one tack if they want to. They can voice their opinions completely. But I think we still would say that we try and keep that objectivity.
Well, I suppose you have to in one way because of the business model of it. Before I forget it, I mean, this whole thing of AI, because obviously you guys are quite eloquent. Obviously when I like Andrew's long pieces, and they're nice to sit down and have a cup of coffee and hold. I will be honest. I did like to be able to hold something and be able to wander around. Like if I want to sit outside, I mean, you can do that with a laptop or your phone. My eyes are getting bad, so I struggle on the phone now. But you guys are quite eloquent. You've been writing a lot for a long time. Now this AI that's all of I'm dyslexic. Even I can write stuff now. So I can get something out to Joe in a matter of 10 minutes, which would have took me a couple of weeks because I do have to keep reading stuff over and over again, change it. And has that changed the way you do stuff? But you're great writers anyway. So are you bothered about what that can do, or how's that coming into the whole thing?
I think it's something we're definitely aware of. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't say I've necessarily changed my writing style so much, but there are definitely telltale signs of when AI has been used and things like that. Everyone says like the EM dashes and whatnot. There's a certain kind of canniness really, or uncanny valley when it comes to written pieces, and it's something that does get used across the board. Me personally, I'm kind of like, it's not something I want to bring into my writing at this stage, but everything's changing the media landscape. You look at things like Google, they're bringing in things like AI searches, etc. now. I think people are going to be looking for content via AI as opposed to traditionally where you're typing in phrases or etc. via Google, and that's something we as publishers have to be aware of. And it may mean that we have to structure articles in different ways going forward. It might be that we need new types of headlines. We already work in a system where it's called search engine optimization, SEO, where you tweak headlines to basically have certain keywords in. So obviously something like tool theft, that's a very kind of poignant subject matter at the moment that a lot of people have an interest in. You write an article and you've got tool theft in the title, and Google's much more likely to pick it up because it realises that's a subject people are, looking into a lot more now and searching for. So, we've always had to, as journalists, you always have to kind of shift how you write a little bit because of the system you're operating in. And I think it's still too early to kind of say really how AI is going to affect what we do now. But, obviously we're all journalists, we'll take pride in that. So we're not going to like throw our thoughts into ChatGPT and say, oh, create an article for us. It's going to be, we're still going to be doing the research. We're still going to be kind of making it happen from that sort of perspective. It's just how that might be presented, I think, could possibly change. But it'd be interesting to hear what the others' thoughts are.
I was just going to throw out a warning to the listeners because I think in a technical subject you've got to be very wary of AI, because we've got to remember that AI, currently at least, collects what's out there. It doesn't have a filtering system. So if, for instance, take a wild example, you ask ChatGPT something on heat pumps and it lights on, I don't know, 700 people who've written something particularly opinionated on heat pumps, or even something that's error strewn, that will still go into the AI collection. So there's no the quality control. I mean, it probably will change in time, but the quality control is not the same. So I see the value of it for collecting something. If you're trying to get your head around something that's complicated, it's a starting point, but it shouldn't be the be all and end all. And then, back to what you were saying about, that's why I think writing features and longer pieces and is going to have even more value, because AI can't do that in the same way.
I was going to say, is it threatening your jobs? Is it threatening journalistic jobs?
Definitely across the board. Like, not us specifically kind of right now. It may well do in time. Obviously we're not, what I keep saying or keep thinking is, like my kids, when they grow up, like I'm going to make them go into a trade because AI is absolutely not going to replace that anytime soon. We're definitely under much greater threat of that, but who knows how quickly the systems are going to come in place. You do hear stories like kind of more, I'd say kind of like newspapers, those sorts of places where it's just general kind of like news is kind of most likely to be replaced by AI, I think, at the moment, and people are losing their jobs over that. I think for a kind of specialist trade press that we work in at the moment, I'd like to think we're not at risk,
because you still have this human element. You still have to go out and meet people.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say that. I mean, we're sitting here having a podcast. You can't currently do that effectively with AI. You can't do what we did at Installer Show, which is have 11 theatres with real people on it having real discussions. So I think that the whole face-to-face, it will probably be more of a premium. It'd be better for people to have a face-to-face, because there will be some of the stuff taken away by AI. I know for a fact that some trade publications are having conversations about what can be taken up by AI, and the phrase human editors has been talked about, and as opposed to the alternative. And you think it's just at the end of the day, that's probably just a cost saving thing, and it doesn't add any value. But for those for whom cost is really important, it will be an issue. But as I say, the more so in skilled trades that we're in, I think it's going to be hard to replace entirely. And also the human, I think we're doing more stuff face to face than we ever used to.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that is a great defence against all that.
And we are using it. So there's transcription software. So this now,
we did the thing at the show.
Yeah, if I had to sit in and transcribe it, I'd have to give it to someone who charges me 45p per 1,000 words to write it all down.
Or you do it yourself, and that would take another 2 hours.
So legitimately, that is so
you would have had to do that in the past.
Yeah. Amrit from Lorefully says AI to enhance, not replace, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it's that. So we use it for that. the stuff that Lorefully did at the show, where it takes 1,000 people's opinions and 24 hours worth of voices and then spits it out into something that makes sense. That's brilliant. That we can then go away as humans and say, oh, this is what the hottest topics are. We can drill down more into this. We use it in the back end of our website, like Joe was saying. We've got legacy articles from like 2002 about a new renewable centre in Scotland, and the headline is Ockeye Renew, and it's like that works in a magazine. It doesn't work on the internet, but we can get AI to do in the background to change all of those names to things that parameters that we set. So the real churn work that would take people ages that's not even touching the copy. It's just renewing a headline.
So Ockeye Renew now says renewable centre in Scotland.
Exactly.
For the archive.
Exactly, and that's what people will ask. Yeah. That's what people will Google. So a lot of the real like grunt work that no one wants to do, AI can do that all night. Yeah. But we're telling it the parameters. So we are using it. We are using it, and it's going well.
The reality for our business of trade publishing, we've all worked in magazines in the past probably that use if there's data collection, you would have a bureau in India. In fact, I still know one as a bureau in India, where that's how they would have cheaper version of the data collectors in the UK. They would be doing it in India, but now you just have AI doing it. So you might say on a global scale, there may be a whole bunch of techie people in India and the subcontinent that have lost their work because of AI. But it can only in my life, I say in my career, which is somewhat shorter, what I've got left, and you lot, I think will be fine. It will be a tool, not a replacement.
I tell you what I noticed when I was younger. So when I was about 14, 15, it would have been HVP. I was reading. I used to read. So let's say it was from one of the shower manufacturers, or one of the boiler manufacturers, or one of the circulation pump manufacturers. I would read the article and I think that just sounds like the same person is writing it. And I used to think, well, how can someone that's in a shower pump, who's writing something talking about their shower pump, how comes it sounding exactly like the same person who's written it for the boiler company? And I found out, I don't know how I found this out, but there was a company that they were advertising. These things were these. I think it was our industry that actually sort of really was at the. When they start to become quite popular advertorials, they were written like newspaper pieces. Yeah. They were an advert. It was promoting that particular product. But I found out there was a London company, I think, who would do that for a manufacturer, and that's why it always sounded the same. Even though I was young, I thought it sounds like the same person's writing this, and it would have been a human person. There was no AI back then, but it would have been.
Yeah, but let's remember that the job of a journalist is to summarise a wealth of information accurately. So you could argue that that's what they were doing across disciplines. Yeah. But where they perhaps were going a bit wrong was they weren't changing their own style. I don't know about the guys here, but personally, style in terms of writing, that's a very important part. And I think making things. Possibly in a trade publication, entertaining is pushing it a bit, but readable. I think we all put work into that to make. We were all taught in journalism school how to summarise passages to make them easier to read, to take all the long words out, to stop using cliches, avoid cliches like the plague. And I think that's where the skill comes in, and then you add some personal style in. You put some. If you're me, some longer words in.
Some cliches.
You choose your cliches carefully.
As writers then, do you... I mean, have you're obviously been writing in trade media, all of you, for a long time, but do you have do you ever want to write a novel, for instance? Because you're professional writers. I mean, do you ever think, I'd love to write a novel or write a screenplay or write this? I mean, is that ever... I
think doesn't every journalist have some secret... yearning for something.
Who's your favourite author?
Don't put me on the spot.
I mean, my granddad always...
F. Scott Fitzgerald, great Gatsby.
Yeah, brilliant, love it. Okay. My granddad always liked Steinbeck. He always said he was very economical with words.
Yeah. George Orwell is a great hero of the editors as well. He was actually a journalist, but he wrote
Dickens was the same.
He's named after the river I live near, so it's Eric Blair, isn't it? Who named himself George Orwell? Yeah. And then there's who wrote Fear and Loathing? Because he's born on the same date as
Hunter S. Thompson.
Another journalist.
More journalist. There's a fella who's died not too long ago called PJ O'Rourke, who did something in America, New York, the New Yorker.
But they
similar
had
kind
style,
of things, but made it,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So they would take a subject, they make it interesting. I mean, there's a lot of, I still read, I don't know, you guys, I still read some of the newspapers, and particularly at the weekend, some of the supplements, and there's some really good interviews, good writers there.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be readable, because if all you're doing, and this is an interesting thing about trade publications. I mean, we were saying about how the resources are reduced, so that you've got an editor sitting there with nothing else, no other people to support them. They're going to just take in what the manufacturers have given them as a press release. They might not do very much to it at all. And then that's how it becomes all a bit homogenised, because you've got, if you imagine that the press release has been sent to, 6 heating magazines, unless you add a little bit of something of your own, it's all going to read the same. Now, I think nowadays, these guys have said to me, well, there's so much coming in that you've got to, there's only so much you can do, which is true. But I think the ability to take out some of the padding, I nearly said another word that was
exactly. Yeah.
But I think it can be difficult to avoid. Yeah, just it all sounding that was the thing I always found when I was on a magazine, making it sound different to the other person's magazine, trying to make yourself distinctive. It's an interesting.
I'm still a fan of the news release, though. This is I suppose, controversial within publishing. But if you take the new iPhone, when the new iPhone comes out, it starts with a press release from Apple, doesn't it? And then you get a load of people going, "Oh, this is what they said it does," and then it does this, and then it does this. So I still think you launch a new boiler. I want to know what the manufacturer says about that boiler.
Yeah.
That's the starting point. That isn't it. This is what brand X says this is going to do. And then you go, okay, well, let's get an engineer's opinion. So you do a professional review. Let's get a load of, what are the USPs of it? Let's get the technical guy on, and we can really drill down into that. So I still think it's important as a Kickstarter, because if you don't tell us, how do we know? It's like, we're launching this and we're bringing it to the installer show. Brilliant. Let's do something there. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a video. Let's do a webinar. All that sort of stuff. So I still think this, but like you said, it needs to be. It can't just all be the same.
I do agree. But what I think is really great, what I always used to think was how you prove your distinctiveness. You'd have a press launch, and then everybody who went to that would have a different take, because you take what they've given you, but then you also think,
and you listen to what
your
they
own,
say.
you listen to what they say, and then you see your own takeaway. There were plenty of editors who'd come away, and you just get what the manufacturer told you, and not even what they've said in the press conference sometimes. But I think you've got, so you're adding a bit of personalisation to it. I think that's always good. And, you'll always find us chatting to the person that's been talking at that press conference, because you're then getting a bit of their insight into it.
See, that's reporting rather than repeating. So
write that down. That's a good one.
It has been noticed. So I won't name them, but there was one company the other day that put on social media their new press release got to 600. I mean, I'm thinking, what's reporting on it? But I have heard that there's a lot of repeat rather than report. So, if you went to you and I have been to a few, haven't we? And you have your own idiosyncratic viewpoint, and that's what you write. Whereas press releases, because I get them now, I mean, people have picked up on my media, and I'm getting all these press releases, embargoed ones. I'm always thinking, I want to put that out before.
What's that mean? Let's
do that.
No, I won't.
Because you'll find yourself not getting many more releases.
But you do notice that everyone that's getting them releases that. So that's repetition rather than going somewhere, listening to the people talking about their product, and then you report on it. So there's a lot of repeating rather than reporting. That's what someone in the journalistic world told me, because I'm not an expert in that. But
no, I think that's true. I always, I'm going to debate you guys, but I always try and get, at the very least, try and get one quote from someone who's up there that isn't in the press release. But I mean, I remember an editor used to be quite well known in this business. I won't name them, but he used to be very, he used to ask lots of questions, 7 or 8 questions, and you think, oh, he knows a lot. And then you'd read his magazine, and it would just be the press release. So you think, well, what was the point of that? Was it just performative? So I think you've got, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it for the benefit of the reader, not for the. benefit of your own.
I'm going to ask
ego.
something quite controversial. We don't have to name any names or
I'll name them all afterwards.
Yeah,
The other
exactly.
microphone's down.
I'm meeting people that want me to talk about them on the podcast or on social media.
Yeah.
And of course, we've seen this industry change hugely. So, like, if you go back 20 years, no one was talking about the heating industry unless you were in it, manufacturer or engineer. But now the whole world talks about industry because it's so important, decarbonising heat. But and everyone seems to have the same mission statements. We want to save the planet, we want to do this, we want to do that. But I'm meeting people and I'm thinking to myself, no, you don't. You just want to make a lot of bloody money, and they do. It's horrible to judge people.
It's not a charity, though, is it?
Yeah.
But
it's business.
No. But it's. I don't mean people being honest. It's either. But you're not in it for that. You are in it because you're seeing that. This is the energy sector. That's bigger than pharma and food, perhaps. And lots of people are now thinking, crikey, this is where it's at. We're diving into it. There's some very clever business people and marketing, and they're getting involved, and they're looking around at who are these little abstract media companies. Oh, look, it's Nathan and BetaTalk. Apparently he's quite popular. Let's go and have a meeting with him and a chat with him. And it's lovely meeting these people, but I'm thinking, you're not in it for that, really.
And I think that's one of the interesting things about the new world, where influence has almost become more important than opinion and voice, and so you got to be careful of that. And I would hold my warning flag up, Nathan, because you are very well connected and you've got a voice. You will have people tracking you down, going, well, I can use his voice and his connections, and it might not be for the right reasons. So I think that's why I said at the beginning that we would always prize objectivity as the most important thing, because I do worry about social media where the number of followers becomes the most important thing. And again, that's what goes back to what we're saying about when we're talking to manufacturers and potential exhibitors. It's not just about the numbers. It's not just about the number of people that are following you. It's about what they're doing with it.
Get them on though. The joy of the podcast as well is people can hear. So if you think someone's being disingenuous, that will come across.
Yeah. Let the listeners judge.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's what you do as a journalist. You let the readers decide.
Yes.
You present your audience with information, and it's up to the readers to come to their own conclusions. You don't push them one way or the other, really. It's very much about okay, this is the information. This is how we presented it. You are an intelligent individual who is, perhaps listening to a podcast or reading an article. You can make a judgment call whether you think whatever someone's talking about is, on point or not, really. So, it's about giving them a platform. Obviously, there's a wider discussion about maybe certain things you don't want to give a platform whatsoever, but for the most part, that rule works true. It's very much a case of, people are smart. They can come to their own conclusions, really, based on the information they're presented with.
So this is one life. So I sat in the HI Awards. We had a day where we sat in Samsung HQ. So these are some of the best engineers in the country, at all areas of the country. Glycol or antifreeze valves in a heating system, in a heat pump system. What would you do? What'd you do?
Well, I've got controversial viewpoints over glycol and the antifreeze valves.
So everyone had a different opinion.
Yeah, they really do.
So Sean Scott up in Aberdeen gets to unbelievably low.
Yes.
It's like you need a glycol in your system. Other people don't. These are the best engineers on the planet. I'm not smart enough to tell you which one of these. They're not smart enough. Neither is any. There isn't an answer to that. That is a yes or a no. So you just put forward the benefits of both, neither, whatever, and then it's up to that engineer to decide. It's like different. There are different training courses that advise different things. Especially with an emerging technology. With boilers, they all know what they're doing. It's a distinguished market, isn't it? With heat pumps and some of the newer technology, and the amount of stuff that comes out now is so quick. All the products and the innovations, it's happening a lot quicker. So it's about presenting something for and against, and then it's up to you then to go and decide what you're doing, or you follow up with another call or a training session, all that sort of stuff. It's interesting. There isn't a yes or no answer to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, because I think this industry has become an industry where people have very fixed opinions and don't change them easily. And I think one of our roles now is to try and present the fact that there are alternatives. I think the whole talking about heat pumps, we talked about heat pumps 8 or 9 years ago. We had a lot of people in the world of installers who just wouldn't even give it any airtime. They go, no, that's not going to happen. And I think over time we've presented the alternatives. We've talked about, well, this could work, give it a go. And I think, I think it is about encouraging people to broaden their horizons sometimes. I mean, you and I are on LinkedIn quite a bit, Nathan. We see quite a lot of fixed opinions. And we see quite a lot of people who find it very hard to change their opinions. And it's interesting.
Yeah, there is. And I think some people worry about it, and I'd probably say they worry about it. So engineering is going to be fluid, and when you dig down to the fine, so buffer will be the one.
Buffer vessels,
VDI.
Yeah, but
you can name.
But people, and obviously, if people are being impolite and horrible to each other, that's a problem. That's not nice. But debate is good because this. Now, the advantage of our industry is, which is I think is the biggest change I've seen in media. It's the biggest change. So, I've noticed and read articles over a lot of years, and a lot of the manufacturers are just literally, their spiel, the contrary the laws of thermodynamics. Now, this is what the advantage this industry has is, if you look at, we've all grown up, especially me and Andrew have grown up, if you look at the food industry, massive, powerful industry on the planet, 1 minute eggs are good for you, next minute they're not, 1 minute butter is, next minute they're not. And no one will ever know, because you can have research, you can have academic research for one camp that says it's good, and an academic research for the other camp that says it's good, so you'd never know. In our industry, there are set laws that came about in the mid-1800s that are set.
Yeah.
So when I read, and I've talked to you about this before, Joe, when I read a couple of years ago an underfloor heat manufacturer who obviously realised, the heat pump thing is coming on, it's really, really coming on, and wrote, radiators need 70 degrees water. That just contravenes the whole laws of thermodynamics. And I got hold of them and said, well, a radiator needs what it needs. It's a dynamic temperature. That's the law. That's you can't argue with it. I mean, they like to, and you can actually look back over the years of our, especially the boiler industry. We've been controlling them wrong since 1981. The condensing boiler got invented, and luckily for me, there's people. I had 40 civil servants at the energy department. I was helping them do a lunch and learn. There's some smart cookies now about, and there's some smart consumers that are analysts, they know the maths, and they're like, why did the heating industry go off on that? I don't think it's anyone's fault. I just think that's how it happened. It wasn't anyone's fault at all, as cynical I can get. That's just how it happened. But the great advantage we've got now as an industry is that there is some fundamental laws. Now, but you will still get the little bits and pieces. Well, is a buffer good? Isn't it good? And that you're always going to get that. I don't worry about it so much. A good engineer, every house is bespoke. It's a bespoke system. They'll make the engineering decisions with the customer.
If the customer's getting the heat they want at a price that is affordable, then who cares really as a customer?
Yeah, usually. I mean, but there is a problem with that. So we all know that our gas boiler industry was the largest in the world to 2016. There's one reason for that, because our boilers didn't last as long. And they didn't last as long because they're going on, off, hundreds of thousands of times during the season. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to run steady state. And they run at too hot temperatures, which is another physical law, that raises the rate of corrosion. So they don't last as long. That's the simple reason. Now, if you go back 15 years ago, the whole industry was like, this is great, we're the biggest in the world. We're still biggest in Europe. But now people are starting to realise why that is. And they're having to, they're not backtracking really. It's just nice that there are people now in the industry that are learning the science and wanting to learn the science, even all the way up to technical director level. So it's a very exciting industry, and I'm sure because during my 30s, when I was in my 30s, I was like, do I really want to be in the heat industry? I want to do something else. I want to use my creativity, and but now I'm really excited about it. I've obviously took a different path. I'm in media like you guys, but I'm sure you've seen it. It's really exciting at the moment. There's all these sort of dynamics, everything sort of happening, even in the media world. I'd have never predicted HVP would have existed forever and ever and ever. You know what I mean?
I think it's interesting. You were touching on it earlier, Nathan. It was very much like it's probably been the last 10 years where heating has actually kind of come into the the realms of like everyone is knowing about it, considering it. You know, when I first started on HVP back in 2017, it was like, well, you know, people didn't really care about it outside the industry. Now it's everywhere. You know,
front page news.
It's a culture war talking point whether you've got a heat pump or not. You know, this whole anti-net zero backlash and things like that. You know,
Richard Lowe's is going on TV shows to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? You would have thought that 5 years ago.
Yeah. No one could have predicted that really at all.
We need Andrew on a TV show.
No, we do not.
Can't afford my fees, Nathan. That's the problem.
No, it's definitely exciting industry, isn't it?
And I think just the whole uptake of heat pumps over the years, you know, this again, we're only at the very start of a real revolution. Was often when I see people who've been knocking around the industry for a while, we talk about probably 2009, 2010 we started banging on about heat pumps, certainly on the cooling side, because that's where they were invented, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we talked about, well, this is going to be a good thing. You can use this for cooling and for heating. But it's taken, you know, till now to get any kind of real traction. I mean, even 3 or 4 years ago, heat pumps were seen as a sort of a bit of a newfangled, perhaps I'm going to exaggerate a bit. 5 or 6 years ago, you know, they were seen as this is a bit of a different technology, rather than, you know, in a couple of years this will be seen as the technology that we're encouraged to adopt. We've had some discussions about hydrogen since then.
Yeah.
And talking about an area where people have strong opinions.
But that's not reported on as much now. You go back to 2.5 years, you know, a lot of the articles you guys would have been having in your publications, there have been a lot of hydrogen articles for us.
Yeah, but they built the prototype boilers. I went to Gateshead.
We've seen the hydrogen boilers working. I've seen them working in heating in actual people's houses in the Netherlands.
But it goes
probably my most controversial feature, according to the readers.
So you went to the show, that show house.
He went to the Netherlands to look at.
Yeah.
So they had they had a street which was a pilot for heating with hydrogen. We interviewed the residents and asked them what they thought about it, and so it was proven as a concept. But I think, currently at least, the economic situation and the mood, the national mood, and you could say that's either the industry, or you could say it's the policy, you could say it's just the customers. It doesn't seem to be for domestic heating for hydrogen, but I believe when the decision
next year 2026.
So the government very cannily kicked the can a little bit down the road on making decisions. And some cynical people suggest that they did that deliberately to allow heat pumps to get more of a foothold before they made any decisions. We don't know that. You may want to ask your friends in the civil service. But it is interesting because we all talked 5 or 6 years ago. We all talked in enthusiastic terms about it.
It wasn't even that long ago, I don't think. Comparatively, I think it was genuinely like 4 years ago, and the discussions were in some ways on parity. At least you'd see in the media of like, you know, are we going to go hydrogen or are we going to go heat pumps? And then obviously the support for hydrogen's just fallen away in that interim period. And you know, I think, Andrew, I kind of agree with you in a lot of ways that it's probably been government behind the scenes has said, you know, look, we're not going to support this, so this has allowed, you know, a lot of the people that were pushing hydrogen knew that they weren't going to get support for it, so, you know, heat pumps were the only real alternative at that stage. And
I do actually feel sorry, and I feel sorry for those there are people that we all know within the manufacturers who've done a lot of work on making those concepts work in practice, and I think quite rightly they feel that they've been a little bit left out to dry by policy.
Because it was government that asked them to
try
it.
It
wasn't like, we want to try and keep selling loads of stuff. Well, don't get me wrong, they do like selling loads of stuff. But it was government that asked them way back, you know, is this possible? Is it feasible? Can you trial it? And obviously, as we know, there's a couple of boiler manufacturers that we kind of know that sort of really took that on board. And it it may have affected them, which would be sad because it wasn't their fault. They did get asked.
And you imagine how much money must have had to gone into R&D for those sorts of systems, etc. You know, the industry generally has stood up when the government has said, like, oh, can you prepare for all eventualities? You know, you look at a lot of manufacturers out there and they have solutions for pretty much everything that's kind of come our way or is coming our way in the future. So, yeah, no, it's a shame, obviously, from their perspective that they've put a lot of money into this and then it's just kind of been like
polarised the industry a bit,
yeah.
you know, which I found quite interesting because at the same time this whole thing of polarisation was going on massively. You know, injection, non-injection for COVID, Trump, not Trump, and of course in Asia it was hydrogen, heat pump, and it was that sort of kind of powerful as well. There was a big sort of
on the same level of mythology has sprung up about whether or not, you know, some of these fuels work or don't work, as was with vaccine and conspiracy theories along that.
It's always been a bit like that though, like brands. It's very brand heavy, isn't it? Like football teams. It's like, I like X, so I really don't like Y.
Now, depending on what you read, and this is where I got into some controversial territory with my feature on hydrogen, the village trial that was rejected by the village in Whitby near Ellesmere Port, there was some high emotion, and some people argue that high emotion came from being whipped up anti-hydrogen sentiment, and some people argue no, they were whipped up by the facts. But there was quite a lot of emotion floating around, and that's why they said we don't want. Ultimately, said we don't want it in our village as a trial, and it then becomes something about, well, who do you believe? Whose opinions do you believe?
Yeah.
What are the facts? And that was a really interesting test case of how, you know, you can really follow some not necessarily objective facts. But yes, let's talk a bit about the electric future, which currently we're working on in very serious terms. We certainly have plenty of heat pumps to talk about.
we should talk about your worldwide domination as well. You're going to New York and...
Well, I was going to talk about the show that's next off the rank.
That's
why I was coming in.
Yeah.
Because it's really exciting for us because Elemental London is going to talk about buildings and it's going to be a real great opportunity to discuss. It's not wholly commercial buildings, but it's a really interesting aspect, you know, how decarbonisation, how the world of heat pumps and electric heating will apply to commercial buildings, because quite rightly the domestic sector has dominated the debate about heat pumps particularly, but you know, this is the Elemental London will be talking to architects, consultants, developers, and they'll be talking about, you know, how it works on a larger scale. And often it'll mean larger heat pumps, and that's exciting for some of us, the big heat pump.
So that just popped into my head because what a lot of people don't realise, and obviously as you know, my family's worked in the commercial heat pump sector for nearly half a century. We have the largest commercial heat pump market in Europe. And I don't think people realise that. That's why Panasonic bought AMP, because they looked around at and so Elemental, I suppose, has this advantage because we have got that positioning. Might even be worth chatting to someone like Panasonic because that's why they bought AMP, which was the sort of the big merchant around the country that was selling air-to-air stuff. Because that can attract people from Europe to our country to that show. Because we have had, like I say, Oxford Street went air-to-air in the 60s. We've been putting it in for some of the most world's famous musicians for 4 decades. You know, it's everywhere. People don't realise it's everywhere in this country, and we've got the biggest commercial market.
Well,
and I think we should be proud of it.
Exactly. Also, excitingly, is that there's some manufacturers and distributors and installers who've been working. You know, it started predominantly as a cooling product, but now, I mean, it works for both air-to-air and also for big chiller heat pumps. In that, people have been selling it as a cooling product alongside sometimes commercial boilers and things like that, and now fully into it can heat, it can cool, and so it's again, that's the revolution. It's that you're no longer talking just about heating or just about cooling. You're talking about linking it all together. So there's a lot of good debate to have, and I don't know about you, Joe Dart, but I'm excited about the fact that we're getting some of these people who are really at the top of the supply chain, the architects and the consultants, who we historically, the installer show has not seen so many of.
Yeah.
we're getting a lot of these people to come and talk, and to hopefully to plot a little bit out of the future for the offices, for the public buildings.
Exactly. Elemental London is all very much about bringing the supply chain together. Obviously we've got this net zero 2050 target, and how are we going to reach it? We're not going to do it if we're not working together, if we don't have every kind of part of that supply chain coming together and actually discussing and sharing learning about how they overcome certain issues. Obviously the cooling and heating needs of NHS buildings is very different to kind of residential and also kind of commercial offices, but and there are areas we can all learn from each other in that regard. So this is what I'm excited about for Elemental London as an event. It's going to be the first event in the UK where it's going to have that level of actually, from a building services perspective, bringing it all together under one roof and exchanging kind of ideas and looking at some of that new exciting technology that's coming in, because how are we going to get on top of it otherwise? If we just work in silos, it's not going to happen, is it? So we've got to really get everyone scream about it, shout about having everyone together in one place, and that's the way we're going to get overcome some of these challenges, is by actually saying, okay, what challenges are you having at this part of the supply chain? What challenges are you as an architect having? How can we kind of make more funding available for this sort of thing? Just there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we're on a great trajectory at the moment, but absolutely there's more that needs to be done.
And it's a great opportunity, I think, for without wishing to make an obvious advert, it's a great opportunity for manufacturers to get involved with hearing what the consultants think, what the architects and the designers think, and also what the people who run the buildings, the developers and the owners. And equally, the reason that we'll soon be publishing we've just started talking about the speakers. We'll be publishing the programme soon, and the reason that we're getting a lot of great engagement from these speakers is they want to hear also what's being developed in the product line as well. So it's we want to foster that debate. We want to talk about collaboration and that kind of thing. It's exciting. And then further down the line, Installer New York, which is collaboration on international
That's your bag.
scale.
You've been to New York. Well, you went out there to sort of canvas.
Yeah, so we're part of 19 Group. That's where we are today. Part of the 19 Group along with us is a company called Oliver Kinross that does London build, New York build, Chicago build, Sydney build. So we're co-locating in New York with them. So New York build will be in the Javits Centre.
Is that Manhattan?
Yeah. Alongside Installer Show New York on the River Pavilion. It'll be for the New York American market. We've got a load of good brands on already, like Navion, which are already one of the big players out there. Vito, Propac, and all that sort of stuff. So you can Google that. But unless you don't want to fly over, you can go to Elemental London, which is much closer.
Or both.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it hard? Because obviously you're surrounded by all these manufacturers, and at the Installer Show, for instance, there was like 800 brands, wasn't there, within the sort of the plumbing and the kitchen. I mean, is it hard to keep up to date with who is who in the space?
I think.
Because I find it hard.
Yeah. I think what works well is that generally we sort of have our sectors, don't we, that we specialise in a bit. Not necessarily that we're wholly focused on, but we have interests. So for me, commercial buildings is where I've come from, and that naturally is an interest on the cooling side. But I've also in the past couple of years learnt about water systems and the whole some of these really interesting water saving showers and things like that. So we start with a sort of natural. I suppose a natural interest, and then you spread it out. So the answer to your question is yes, it is hard, but we do sort of try and split it up a little bit. So we have our own kitchens and bathrooms writer, don't we?
Yeah. Electric consultants.
We have an electric writer. Yeah, we are starting to
EV
to make them sort of like discrete sector discussions, aren't we? So installer electric is a good example.
There has been a lot of movement in the industry though in the last couple of years, more than there was previously, with people acquiring people, brands acquiring, like you said, lots in the merchanting world. And then if you kind of look at, if you take like America for example, you don't realise that unless you do a bit of digging, like this brand is owned by a massive American company, and that you might not know over there, but they super do. So it is quite interesting.
And also the whole world of cooling is going to be interesting out in America, because they are actually quite a few years behind in terms of the way they're changing refrigerants. So the F-gas in Europe is probably 5 years, if not more, ahead of what they're looking at in America. And in America, it's all statewide, so there's a lot of different regional
New York's a completely different climate
regulations
to Florida.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I mean, it is exciting.
They've got different climate zones, which makes a big difference.
In New York, they have a heating season and a cooling season, because at the minute over there, we're talking to people and they're like, we have to have the aircon on. And then again, you get to heating season and it'll be freezing cold. They'll have blizzards and all these warnings and stuff like that. It's much more disparate than we get over.
I mean, the concept of domestic air conditioning is still a bit niche
in the UK.
In the UK,
very much so.
But in the States, there's some pretty. I mean, for instance, if we end up with Miami, you never know, it might happen. There's, you've got the aircon on all the time, haven't you?
Yep.
Well, I've lived in both New York and not Miami, but Florida, Fort Lauderdale, which I found too hot. I don't know how people can live here. It is too hot. But well, we've had our hour and a bit, haven't we?
Is that it? We got. Is it? Do we not do the thing where? Is there anything more you want to say? That's what the journalists ask. You see. That's my wrap-up question.
Anything else you want to say, Andrew?
Elemental London. Free entry.
Well, how do people... Yeah, free entry. When is it? It's 20th of November, if I got that right.
Our website, elementallondon.show.
There you go. Yeah, elementallondon.show. There's a lot of information there about the event and to be able to register there for free. It's 19th and 20th of November at Excel in London. So obviously please do come along. We're going to have a great program, probably about 200 speakers or so, around kind of 200 exhibitors, all across the built environment. So very keen to
come along.
See how it all turns out.
Was it XLJ? You and I went to a press conference and then we got on the tube to a show. Was that XL?
Yeah, we went. Yeah, that's right. Because I think we went to another event then, didn't we? Yeah, because. It was an era event, and then we went across, wasn't it? I seem to remember. But,
it's another show, probably. Yeah.
What is the? Have we got? You said there's speakers already lined up. Is there any specific topics that are particular interest that are being spoken about?
Oh, the Matrix.
Oh, you name it. We're talking about
Matrix.
it. No, we've made a Matrix.
Oh,
we've made a Matrix of speakers. It's nothing to do with red pills and blue pills. I'll say that.
A matrix of speakers.
No, a matrix of progress. So just goes down. Don't overcome. Right, edit this out. Edit this out. We'll just take a long pause to allow the edit to go. So what? Yeah, in terms of themes, it really is. Well, what do you think is important in buildings? And we're covering it. So, it will go for everything from indoor air quality, healthy homes and buildings, all the way through to we've got a great session decarbonising London. We've got heat networks, of course. We've got big heat pumps.
Yeah.
We've got there's a panel of architects which will be called something along the lines of building the future or designing the future.
Yeah.
And we've got a whole. So we've also, I suppose we should say for the record, we're also is integrated with CIBSE Build to Perform. So we've got all of the CIBSE organisations. We've got CIBSE speakers. We've got building engineering consultants. We've got NHIC with our Homes Hub. It's all happening.
So there'll be some CPD.
It'll be CPD.
It'll all be CPD'd. So if you're going to collect your points, come along.
Points mean prizes, don't they?
Points mean career progression. No.
That's a much more exciting way of putting it, definitely.
Well, it's been a pleasure. So I don't know how else to best summarise it.
Well, thank you all for coming on. This has been a proper media thing, because it's we're all in media, aren't we?
We've managed to get four egos into a room and no argument has broken out.
And we're probably going to have a meal and a pint at some point.
We might have a pint too, in the traditional way that all heating people finish the evening.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you.
Pleasure.